Howdy, folks, and welcome back to another Wednesday One Shot.
Buddy.
That's my dog. Um, and we're here this time to talk about Stargate SG1. And I have a good friend of mine, and probably yours, Len LaGuardia here. Len, how you doing, sir?
Good. How is everybody doing today? Well, I
I
guess no
think
one's.
they're not going to answer because it's not
I
live,
know.
but I think they're doing fabulous.
I hope so. I
So,
like to think that.
I mean, odds are that they had time to click on this video and watch it, which means that, there's nothing serious going on in their lives and they should be having a good day. So, um, and we're going to be talking about some Stargate. So, for those of you tuning in for the first time for a Wednesday one shot, basically this is where usually it's Jesse and I. We're recommending something that we enjoy. Sometimes it's Jesse and somebody else. Sometimes it's me and somebody else. And today, like I said, we're going to talk about Stargate SG1, which is a series ran for 10 seasons. It's a little bit older. It's been out there for a little bit. This is one that I recently just started watching. The Four Horsemen toy line or toy creators have the Figure Obscura toy line that they just did, the Anubis and Bastet. Kind of got me in an Egyptian feel, and I watched the old Stargate movie. I was talking to Len about it. He recommended this series, and I'm now 9 seasons into a 10-season run, and man, I just love it. So, but I know Len, you've watched this a while ago, and you've watched it multiple times. So, how did you hear about this series? What did you think about it when it first ran? Like, what were your first impressions?
Well, I definitely first discovered it because I liked the movie. So
Mm,
the original movie with James Spader and Kurt Russell was moderately popular. I don't think it was a runaway hit at the time, but it was
mm,
one of those like summer blockbusters where it was very pumped by MGM to be like the big movie of the year. You know, they thought they had two big stars in it and it was going to be really big. And I don't think it flopped at the box office, but I don't think it did really well. But like a lot of science fiction from that era, like it had a big cult following that started
mm,
following it. And I was one of them. I loved it. I didn't see it in the movie theater, but I remember like watching it over and over and over again, like on DVD or I don't even remember at the time like what media it was on. And I always loved it. And when I heard they were going to do a show, I thought it was going to really cool. It was a neat idea. I thought MacGyver was cool. So seeing
mm,
Richard Dean Anderson move on to something else was a really neat thing. And the only downfall of it at the time was that it was on Showtime,
mm.
which you needed one, you needed cable. Two, you needed a subscription to Showtime if you had cable. We didn't always have cable where I lived, believe it or
Right.
not. We're kind of in the sticks. It's not like, even though it's New Jersey, people think like, that everywhere is like city, but it's not. And it was hard for me to see. And I remember going somewhere, when you're younger. I'm not going to say kid because I wasn't. I mean, to me, I was a kid, but I was probably in my maybe 20s.
Mm,
Um, I went to a hotel somewhere on vacation, and they had Showtime, and they happened to have it on. Like it was on. I was like, oh, I always wanted to see this. Let me watch this. Like I don't know where I was, like Florida, and I stayed inside and watched freaking Stargate, and I thought it was cool. It was a
mm.
little. It wasn't like what you. It was lower budget, obviously, than a big budget
Right.
movie. So like your first impression was like, this is okay. It's a little weird. But then like sought out the DVDs, so that's how I had originally watched it, was DVDs. I think originally it was like renting them through Netflix. Remember when you used to have to get them in the
Yep.
mail? And I think
Yeah, he
that's
had
how.
to get the mail, and then you had to mail them back and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I how I did most of them, and then like I had purchased them as they became available. I want to say I started that maybe around season 3 or 4
Mm,
might have been the first of like where I was like really able to watch it continuously.
that's cool. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a lot easier because now it's on Amazon Prime. So
Oh
just
yeah.
you just kind of binge watch it. Um, I recently just found out that you can pay a few dollars extra to get commercial free on Amazon Prime. So I did that because as you're going through 10 seasons, those can kind of add up. So did that. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. you know, I watched the movie again before I went into the series, and it's something that we kind of talked about a little bit. Like the first season, maybe season and a half, it kind of feels like the main characters are trying to portray the roles in the same way that the actors did in the movie, and it's still good. It's a really good series even for the first season or so, but it just feels like they're not being natural, they're not being themselves. And then as they grow into the roles, it gets a lot more natural. Like Richard Dean Anderson as Jack does such an amazing job. Like he's probably one of like the best like lovable assholes of any series. Like he's just like this sarcastic asshole, but he's good-hearted and yeah, anyway, it's
Yeah.
and I see what you're saying about the budget, but there's still some really good special effects in this, from the Stargate itself to, you know, some of the weapons and ships and things like that as the series goes on. You know, for an older series, I think it holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too. And to what you said about the actors finding their like place, I know that like one of the excuse me, one of the big gets for them was getting Richard Dean Anderson to do this. And supposedly the only way he said he would do it is if he could be himself. Like he didn't want
Hmm.
to be um
Kurt Russell.
yeah, and
Yeah.
he said like listen, because he was pretty big at the time. Like MacGyver went a lot, like many seasons as a
Hmm.
major network show. So he was kind of big for them to have, and his demands were, I don't want to be the only guy. I want an ensemble cast, because he didn't want to
Hmm.
carry it like he did with MacGyver. You know, MacGyver was like
Right.
him, so he wanted like an ensemble cast where he had many other people to take some burden off of him, and also he wanted to be able to be funny. He was like, I don't want to be super serious like this character in the movie.
Yeah.
So,
And I think he nails it. I mean, some of the one-liners that he has throughout are just epic.
oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Some of the
And
mannerisms and things that he does like crack me up, and I always wonder if it was written or if he just does it. You know,
yeah,
like he'll go to check his watch and he'll be like with a cup of coffee and it'll go pouring all over,
yeah.
and you're like, did he just do that or did they actually write that?
It does feel very natural. I don't know how much is improv and how much is in the script, but he does get to a point where it feels very comfortable, and he's just one of those guys that you just, you know, love, even though they kind of can be a jerk at times. I kind of think of like Dean in Supernatural, like kind of
Oh
that kind of
yeah,
vibe,
oh
you
yeah,
know? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny.
Um,
It's funny you mentioned that, because I would have to say to like all the people watching, like if you're on the fence or you never really gave it a shot, I meet a lot of people that maybe they're like, oh yeah, I watched Stargate, and they watched like
mhm,
a couple episodes back
right.
in the when it was on Sci-Fi, because it had switched to Sci-Fi in I'm cheating with notes on the side, 2002. It went to
Mhm,
Sci-Fi Channel, and it got a broader viewership because
mhm,
like that was a basically free cable channel that everyone could get and watch. And some people at that time, because sci-fi was cool, you know, they had a lot of new things,
right.
Battlestar and everything, and I think people kind of are like, yeah, I watched some of it, but I don't think like a lot of people watched all of it,
Mhm.
you know. And I just rambled to the point where I don't even know what my point was.
No, you're fine. We were kind of talking about him being a lovable asshole, kind of like Dean in
Yeah.
Supernatural.
Yeah,
And,
and I feel like it's a lot like Supernatural. I just my wife, you know this, my wife and I finished a couple months ago Supernatural. We binged the whole
mhm,
thing and we loved it. Like we go back and watch it randomly. I love it. And it has the same feel where there's like a gravity to every episode,
mhm,
and it has a certain amount of seriousness, but not that much seriousness. Like you know they're going to
yeah.
make it in the end. You know it's going to be okay, and it has that little bit of comedy twisted in. I think they're very similar series.
Yeah, I do too. Like they have that, you know, we've kind of talked about this. There's that kind of monster of the week kind of vibe to where, you know, each individual episode you could watch it unless it's, you know, there are some two-parters, but for the most part, you can watch an individual episode and it'll stand alone and as is. But then there's also this like overarching storyline that goes from episode to episode and kind of carries on. And you'll see some characters that are just kind of on for a second and then 2 seasons later they'll show up in a much bigger role or something. So it's, I just feel like the continuity of the whole series is done really well, but also the individual standalone episodes are good. And I feel the same way about Supernatural. Like, you could watch one episode, but if you do watch the whole series, there are some things that carry over, from episode to episode.
Yeah, I believe I think that there was like definitely some production ties between the two shows.
Mm,
Being a fan of both, my wife and I would get a kick out of watching Supernatural and being like, "Oh, that's blah 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 from Stargate," and "Oh, that's blah blah blah." Like, they shared a lot of the same like guest actors that would come in for like half a scene or the cold
mm-hmm,
intro that Supernatural would do. Uh, Up to the point where Amanda Tapping was on Supernatural, and then she went and she directed a bunch of episodes like towards the
mm-hmm.
end, and they definitely shared a lot of like production. They were both in Vancouver. They were probably the same studio type of
Yeah,
thing. So
I got the same feel from like Star Trek: The Next Generation. I was a big Next Gen fan growing up, and there's just a lot of characters from that series that showed up in this series as well.
yeah,
So,
well, I think that that you could tell that they were definitely fans, Trek fans, because there it has
mm,
that Trek vibe to it.
oh yeah,
They and back. This is going back to what you said before. It does a really good job of not dating itself. I think whether that was on purpose, where they were like, you know, don't use any kind of like cell phones or don't use this. Like, you can watch it and yeah, there's certain things that you're like, oh, that looks dated. Like, that's old. Oh, look at the truck he's driving is a 1999 Ford F-150, but it's not horrible, right? Like,
right,
it gives you a hard time to really realize like what era you're in with it. And I forget that too. Like, I forget how old it is
yeah,
until you see an actor now, and you're like, oh, that guy's really old now, and he's
yeah.
really young there.
Yeah, I was looking up Richard Dean Anderson, something about him this week, and like it showed a picture of him now and said he's like 74, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, and then you
Yeah.
kind of realize, oh well, this was a while back, but I think it holds up really well though. Not because when I started watching it after you had recommended it, I didn't really know when it aired. I didn't look up the years,
Hmm.
um, and so it felt to me like it was fairly new. Um, but obviously it's not.
Yeah.
So,
The one tell that I always see and I pick up is because it happens in like the main studio is SG1, the command center,
mhm,
and the monitors, right? They have like the old CRTs
yeah,
for a lot of it. Like, they don't upgrade till almost like now, like where you're at now, like 9, like
mhm,
to the flat screen LCD like we all use now. Like, they're
mhm.
using these big like NEC CRT
Yeah,
monitors, and that's like
yeah,
one
I
of the
didn't even
only
catch
things that's
that.
a big tell.
The only thing that hits me that makes me realize it's an older series is when I'm watching it and I see like the black bars on the side, because it
Yeah.
wasn't in the
Yep.
widescreen format.
Yep.
Um, so, but then once you get into, I think it's season 7 or 8, that then Stargate Atlantis starts,
Yep.
which I'll probably do a separate one of these Wednesday one shots on that at some point. But
Probably.
then there's some kind of intermingling of storylines and stuff between the two of them. But I don't want to get too much into that. But I would say the whole universe that they built here, kind of stemming from that one movie, I think they just did a really good job, and the character creation is good. The storylines are fun. Um, yeah, I mean, even some of the villains are have some likability to them. It's just a fun series, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And it's the type that if you watch and you love it, like, it's the type you can go back and watch
Yeah.
random episodes. It's on that Pluto TV, which is like, it's that free like streaming service that has commercials, but it's
Hmm.
always random, like the episodes, like television would be, right? Like, it's like
Right.
watching reruns when we were younger. So like, I'll throw that on if I'm not like doing something where I want to pay attention, just so it's on in the background. And it's
Hmm.
always random, and they're always good. Like, I mean, there's hardly anything that an episode that comes up that I'm like, oh, I hate this episode. Like, I'll never like fast forward.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, folks, we're at the 15-minute mark. Basically, it's just a series that we enjoy. Obviously, sci-fi related. If you've watched the Stargate movie, there is a tie into that. They're using the Stargate to, travel different places throughout the galaxy, meet different alien races. If you're into sci-fi, it's a lot of fun. I would say check it out if you haven't. Be willing to at least give it a couple seasons, I would say. Because like I said, the first season, they're still kind of, trying to get their feel, getting their feet underneath of them. But if you give it 2 seasons, I think you'll probably be hooked. So,
yeah. And you can't really skip ahead. Like, you can't say like I'm going to skip the first 2 because there's stuff that plays out in the first season that happens all the way through the series. So like, yeah, don't skip out on it.
For sure. Anything else that you want to say before we close this out?
No, just that I hope that we do an Atlantis one. I feel like we might have to do like a 9 and 10 and movie episode too. So maybe 2 more. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for you to get through Atlantis and get through the finals of SG1 and get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in season 2 of Atlantis, and so far it's really good. So yeah, I definitely see us doing one of these, after I get a little bit further through that. So, but anyway, folks, thanks for watching. Check out SG1. It's a lot of fun. If you're into sci-fi, I think you're going to enjoy it. And we'll see you next week. We still don't have a way to close out this show.